This morning.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
What
Maria.
a fight. Oh, my goodness. So, look, you're an African-American successful business person. You're the secretary of HUD. You work for President Trump. Is he racist?
He is not racist at all. You know, the first time I met him, it was before we got into politics, was down at Mar-a-Lago. And he and I were talking, and someone came up to him and said, Mr. Trump, Rod Stewart is here. And he said, yeah, but this is Ben Carson. You know, that's the kind of person he is.
In a rare and heartfelt moment, Dr. Ben Carson, former HUD secretary and world-renowned neurosurgeon, spoke up to challenge the growing claims that labeled former President Trump as racist. Having worked closely with Trump, Carson made it clear that, in all his experience, he never witnessed any hint of racism from him. He reflected on their early meetings, long before politics entered the picture, describing Trump as respectful, considerate, and genuine, a side the public rarely gets to see because the media often overlooks it. Carson emphasized that his words weren't about politics or loyalty to a party. They came from personal experience, from someone who had seen the real person behind the public image, beyond the noise and controversy.
Escalation in President Trump's showdown with the four progressive congresswomen known as the Squad, as their Twitter battle continues to blow up social media. Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar tweeted this last night. You all should end this charade and accept that this racist president wants every black, brown person deported and Muslims banned. His immigration policies say this much. The president tweeted this morning, I don't believe the four congresswomen are capable of loving our country. They should apologize to America and Israel for their horrible, hateful things that they've said. They are destroying the Democrat Party, but are weak and insecure people who can never destroy our great nation.
Carson recalled a little-known story from the presidential debate days that revealed a lot about character. During one debate, his name was accidentally skipped during introductions. While every other candidate walked right past him, Trump stopped and stood beside Carson until the confusion was sorted out. That small gesture, Carson said, showed a level of respect and decency rarely acknowledged in politics. He used this moment to point out how the media often overlooks genuine acts of kindness, focusing instead on stories that create division and mistrust among Americans. To Carson, what truly defines a person isn't what the headlines claim, it's how they treat others when no one expects them to.
They should apologize to America and Israel for their horrible, hateful things that they've said. They are destroying the Democrat Party, but are weak and insecure people who can never destroy our great nation. Ben Carson is the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, and he joins me right now. And Mr. Secretary, it's good to have you on the program this morning.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
What
Maria.
a fight. Oh, my goodness. So, look, you're an African-American successful business person. You're the secretary of HUD. You work for President Trump. Is he racist?
He is not racist at all. You know, the first time I met him, it was before we got into politics, was down at Mar-a-Lago. And he and I were talking, and someone came up to him and said, Mr. Trump, Rod Stewart is here. And he said, yeah, but this is Ben Carson.
Around the same time, Ilhan Omar took to social media once again, claiming that former President Trump wanted to deport every black and brown person and ban all Muslims. Those were serious accusations, especially coming from a sitting member of Congress. But Ben Carson quickly responded, calling her statements nothing more than political drama meant to provoke outrage. He warned that such comments aren't just misleading, they are harmful to the nation's unity. Carson explained that this kind of rhetoric doesn't bring people together or promote understanding, it spreads confusion and hostility. In his view, America needs honest dialogue, not emotional sound bites designed to keep citizens divided.
You know, that's the kind of person he is. And you may remember when we were running for president at one of the debates, and I couldn't hear my name announced, so I was standing there. Everybody else gleefully walked past me, but Trump stood right next to me until they straightened it out. You know, that's the kind of person that he is. You know, he lived in New York. Jesse Jackson gave him an award for the incredible things that he had done in the African-American community. I have never seen anything that even resembles racism. And look at the policies that have been done.
Carson took a measured approach when talking about the growing radical influence within Congress. Without naming anyone directly, as required by federal guidelines, he warned that some members seem more focused on promoting ideology than actually serving the public. He explained that their strength doesn't come from their ideas alone, but from the media platforms that magnify their words and portray their agenda as moral truth. Carson cautioned that this partnership between extreme politics and biased coverage is deeply harmful to the nation's unity. He urged that Americans deserve straightforward, honest journalism, not carefully crafted narratives that manipulate opinions and divide communities.
And look at the people who have been helped. Black unemployment at the lowest level ever. Same thing for Hispanics. You look at the fact that he is engaged so much in second chance for people. Things that other people talked about, but he has done. Opportunity zones where people who've made enormous amounts of money have the opportunity to take unrealized capital gains and to plow them into the areas of the country that have traditionally been neglected. It's what's been done. It's not what's been said or how it's been interpreted.
Carson spoke firmly but thoughtfully about the role of the media in today's America. He reminded everyone that journalism is the only profession explicitly protected by the Constitution, a protection designed to uphold truth and transparency, not promote bias or propaganda. Yet, Carson noted, too many outlets today have shifted from informing the public to influencing what people think. He urged the press to return to its original purpose, delivering facts with honesty and fairness. When reporting focuses on truth instead of emotion or agenda, Carson said, the nation can begin to heal, rebuild trust, and move forward together as one people.
And hashed over and over in the media.
But Secretary, look at this tweet that Ilhan Omar has put out. I mean, this is an elected congresswoman, an elected position that says that, the president wants every black and brown person deported, every Muslim banned. How is this possible that an elected official can get away with saying this as if this is fact?
Well, there is a radical element. I don't want to talk about a specific congressperson because of the Hatch Act, but, there is a radical element that has been introduced into our legislative body that...
Carson also pointed to the real record of the Trump administration, results that, in his view, spoke louder than any political debate. He reminded viewers that under Trump's leadership, black and Hispanic unemployment dropped to record lows. Programs like Opportunity Zones brought new investments into struggling neighborhoods, while Second Chance initiatives helped former offenders rebuild their lives and contribute to their communities. These, Carson said, were not empty promises or symbolic moves, they were tangible policies that improved lives across the country. He added that if the media truly cared about progress, they would focus on these successes instead of promoting outrage and negativity that only distort the truth.
Seems to be intent on pushing their ideology, and they have an accomplice in the media in doing so, and this is very detrimental to our country. I think we should be having a conversation with the media, and they should be having a conversation themselves, asking themselves, why is it that the press is the only business that has been protected by our Constitution?
As the conversation turned to housing inequality, an issue Carson knows deeply from his time leading HUD, he offered a clear and personal perspective. He explained that black homeownership dropped sharply after the financial crisis, largely because of predatory lending and poor policy decisions that encouraged families to take on homes beyond their means. When the housing market crashed, many of those families lost not just their property, but their financial stability. Carson stressed that the path to real empowerment isn't built on political slogans or short-term promises. It comes from teaching financial responsibility, enforcing fair lending practices, and creating genuine opportunities for families to build lasting security and independence.
And the reason is because they were supposed to disseminate objectively to the people of America real information upon which they could make decisions. They were not supposed to try to manipulate people. So, there are the radical element that is taking advantage of the ideological bent of the media, and it's unfair to the people. But as Thomas Jefferson said, the people will come through. The people will be smart enough to figure this out. I hope that's true.
Carson shared a striking statistic that captured just how powerful homeownership can be. He noted that the average renter in America has a net worth of about $5,000, while the average homeowner's net worth is roughly $200,000, a difference of 40 times. He explained that owning a home isn't just about having a place to live. It's about building stability, gaining independence, and creating a lasting legacy for future generations. Carson emphasized that expanding access to homeownership is one of the most effective ways to reduce racial and economic inequality. Yet, he cautioned that too many leaders focus on maintaining dependency through government programs instead of helping families take control of their financial future and build true, lasting wealth.
Well, I mean, I agree with that sentiment. This dysfunction is certainly not serving the people, that's for sure. Secretary, before you go, a word on housing. We just saw housing numbers which showed that home ownership in the black community is now at an all-time low, while Hispanics are actually driving the housing market, increasing numbers in terms of home ownership. Can you characterize what you're seeing? We're about to speak with...
Carson made it clear that the real threat to national unity isn't Donald Trump. It's the political machinery that benefits from keeping Americans angry and divided. He pointed out that figures like Ilhan Omar seem to thrive on outrage rather than offering real solutions. Every time they label the country as racist or unjust, they fuel a message that weakens national pride and trust. Carson emphasized that true progress can't come from constant blame or resentment. It grows from opportunity, mutual respect, and a shared sense of responsibility for the nation's future. While the loudest voices may dominate the headlines, he reminded viewers that they don't reflect the true spirit of the American people, a spirit rooted in hard work, faith, and unity.
Brian Moynihan, the chairman and CEO of Bank of America, largest mortgage originator. I'd like to get your take in terms of housing right now before we speak with Mr. Moynihan coming up in the program.
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, black home ownership has declined significantly, particularly because of the housing crisis. Now, people took advantage of a lot of people who did not have a lot of wherewithal in terms of financial knowledge about housing, and by manipulating debt-to-income ratios and
In closing, Allison Reacts reminded viewers why stories like this are so important to hear. She noted that mainstream media outlets rarely highlight voices like Ben Carson's because his message doesn't align with their preferred storyline. But many Americans, she said, can see past the noise and recognize what truly matters, the nation's foundation built on faith, hard work, and freedom. Allison encouraged people to stay alert, think for themselves, and not allow misinformation to distort the truth about their country. She ended by saying that real truth doesn't need to be defended with anger or spin. It simply needs to be shared honestly and fearlessly so that it continues to guide America forward.
The various types of manipulations for credit that were done, they put people into houses that they couldn't afford,
I see.
Which is not doing anybody any favor. You lose your house, you lose your credit, you lose your future opportunities. We're still recovering from that. And it is very important that we do what we can to get people back into housing, because the average net...
Allison highlighted that the mainstream media today often prioritizes influence over information. She explained that many outlets focus on stirring emotions instead of presenting facts, because outrage attracts more attention than honesty, and division brings in more views than unity. She pointed out the sharp contrast between Ben Carson and Ilhan Omar. Carson remained calm, relying on facts, experience, and reason to make his case, while Omar leaned on emotion, using fear and sweeping claims to drive her message. Allison said this difference perfectly illustrates the larger problem. Too many voices today chase reactions, not truth, and that's what keeps the public misinformed and divided.
Worth of a renter is $5,000. Average net worth of a homeowner is $200,000.
Yeah.
40-fold difference. That accounts for a lot of the income gap that we are seeing, and we're working very hard to correct that.
All right, we will talk more about that. I just found it interesting that Hispanics are doing so well, and you're seeing such a difference in terms of the black community. Secretary, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Allison Reacts opened her remarks by pointing out a growing problem in today's political climate, the belief that being the loudest somehow means being the strongest. She reminded viewers that raising your voice isn't the same as being right. While Ben Carson focused on facts, perspective, and truth, Ilhan Omar leaned on identity politics to avoid accountability. That contrast, Allison said, perfectly reflects how far America's national conversation has drifted from reason and respect. Carson, she noted, also brought attention to something the media refuses to discuss: Donald Trump's long record of supporting minority advancement long before entering politics. He had opened doors for business owners, funded programs in urban neighborhoods, and worked with communities that many politicians only visit during campaign season. Allison reminded viewers that even prominent figures like Jesse Jackson once honored Trump for these efforts. But today, that history has been erased because it doesn't fit the narrative. The media, she said, thrives on headlines without context because real context exposes inconvenient truths. When Trump spoke about immigration reform, the debate wasn't about border safety, it was labeled as racism. When he discussed crime reform, it wasn't about second chances, it was framed as discrimination. Carson pointed out that whenever conservatives speak about responsibility or self-reliance, those words are twisted into something hateful. That distortion, he warned, blinds Americans to genuine progress happening right in front of them. His message went deeper than politics. America isn't being divided by race or income, he said, it's being divided by narratives. The radicals craft emotional headlines that turn citizens against each other. Allison explained that this tactic feeds on what she called outrage fatigue. The more people argue online, the less they notice who's controlling the message. She said Omar's posts aren't just statements, they are part of a strategy that uses division disguised as compassion. But despite the noise, Carson's faith in the American people stood out. He believes truth always survives tension, and that citizens are smart enough to recognize manipulation when they see it. Allison agreed, noting that while mainstream platforms amplify anger, independent media and grassroots movements are bringing back honest dialogue. Truth, she said, lasts. Outrage burns out. One of Carson's strongest messages focused on economic freedom. He said real equality doesn't come from endless government aid. It comes from ownership, owning a home, a business, or your own future. Allison emphasized that leaders like Omar often promote dependency instead of empowerment, offering short-term benefits instead of lasting opportunities. Carson's vision, she said, is simple but powerful: families growing wealth instead of waiting for it, not politics, just practical truth. Allison also exposed how modern politics punishes honesty. When Carson shares data, like record low minority unemployment or declining poverty rates, those facts are ignored. But when Omar makes emotional claims without evidence, they dominate headlines. That, Allison said, is what she calls selective amplification, a system that rewards narratives, not truth. Throughout the interview, Carson demonstrated something rare in modern politics: dignity. He didn't raise his voice or attack anyone. He simply presented facts, calmly and respectfully, even when faced with harsh criticism. Allison observed that in today's political world, dignity is often mistaken for weakness, when in reality, it's the greatest sign of strength. While Omar used emotion to create division, Carson used reason to promote understanding. That difference, between noise and wisdom, shows who's truly serving the people and who's serving themselves. In her closing words, Allison told viewers that America stands at a crossroads. One path leads toward anger, division, and resentment, the path pushed by radical voices. The other leads toward strength, unity, and freedom, the path defended by people like Carson. She said this moment isn't about party loyalty anymore, it's about values. Will Americans choose unity over outrage and truth over tribalism? Allison ended by saying that real change begins when courage replaces fear and facts replace noise, because truth, no matter how long it's buried, always finds its way back to the surface.